Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where it turns out before Unreal Engine, before Unity, or even before Games Maker, there was the Games Factory. Made by Europress and released in 1996, this was the follow-up to Klik and Play. Inside the box you'd get the program on a CD and a nice weighty manual. Though if you got the very big box edition, then you got a very nicely spiral bound manual. The goal of the Games Factory was to simplify the process of trying to make a game by giving the user a simple visual interface, so the user didn't have to learn how to program. All they needed to do was visualize the interactions with the various objects. I will be using the 32-bit version on Windows 95, which is where I ran it back in the day, but there was a 16-bit version for those of you that were still running Windows 3. With it booted, we end up here at the Storyboard editor. This is where we get to see all the levels that we've added to the game, and these don't even have to be gameplay levels. You can have static images, videos, or even get it to run other Games Factory files. This is so you can have multiple people working on the same game at the same time, or just logically split the game up. As we can see, there's a single default level already added. There's the play area of 640 by 480. If you're making a scrolling game, this would be where you set the size of the level, which is independent to the screen size, which we can set in the game settings. And if we click on a level, we end up here at the level editor, where you can add any level objects that you might have already created, or add any from the huge array of libraries that it includes. We get backgrounds, animated characters, explosions, tiles, all sorts. There's an amazing range for you to pick from. With all this in mind, let's try creating something quick and simple, like a Breakout Clone. So let's delete this level and get started with adding a brand new one. With a blank canvas, let's check out the libraries, and we can see there's a bat and ball one here already, which is very handy. So let's add the bat. And we want to be able to move it with the mouse, which is as simple as setting the movement type to be mouse controlled. And we can even test it out, which shows that we're going to need to change its limitations. Much nicer. The next step is to add the ball, and we set it to become a computer controlled bouncy ball, which again allows us to test it inside its own confines, and then we can actually even test it inside the editor, and oh, it went off the side of the screen. This is because it turns out we have no logic attached to the ball at all, and so the ball has no idea what it needs to actually bounce off. To do that, we're going to need to set up some logic, which is done on the event screen. From here we can add events in the basic form of if condition, then do action. And you're not limited to doing just a single action per condition, you can do multiple. So we can add a condition that if the ball collides with the bat, then it should bounce. But this isn't the only way to add events. The Games Factory actually helps you by having step through, which informs us any time an event happens and allows us to set the actions. Such as here, the ball is going off the side of the screen. So what do we want it to do? We want it to bounce. And we can do this for all the other actions required. With that done, now we need bricks. And in the library we have one. But who wants a Breakout Clone with a single brick colour? So let's create 3 bricks and use the built-in editor to change the colour of 2 of them. The graphics editor isn't bad, it's definitely better than Paint, but that's not saying much really, is it? And as you can imagine, we don't want to set up the logic for each of those bricks individually. That would be a lot of work. So instead we can add each of them to a group, and then we can add logic based against that group. So now we can say when the ball hits the group, it will bounce, we'll add 100 to the score, and then we'll destroy the instance of that group that we're dealing with. And with that done, we can now add a whole bunch more bricks. And we can do a quick test, and yep, that all seems to be working quite nicely, though we need some HUD to show the scores and lives. That's much better. And with that done, we can easily copy and paste it and make multiple levels using the logic we've already got in place, and then use the conditionals to easily check to see if all the bricks are destroyed, which will allow us to go on to the next level. But instead of boring you with lots and lots of levels, let's do something more akin to Crypt & Egg and add in a boss fight. So we'll copy the level as we did before, we'll remove all the stuff out of it, and so all we've got is the bat and ball. Now I want to do a crazy, insane, mad looking boss, and thankfully I have some images on this computer that I can use, and you can import them by just dragging them onto the levels screen. And I'm sure you'll agree that's one terrifying looking boss. Now I've got two images here, so we have 2 frames of animation, because who just wants a static looking boss? And with all the images into their individual places, we can see that, yeah, this 2-frame animation, it's not fun. But thankfully, there is a built-in morphing tool, and we can use that to animate it. So after changing the grid color, we can move some of these grid points along to make sure we get a nice looking morph. And we can actually set the number of frames, which in this instance we'll leave it at 10, and then tell it to render it out. And yes, that is looking pretty damn nice. And to go along with this animation, I don't want him to be static either. So let's put him at the side of the screen and set up a basic path for him to follow. And yep, that's looking pretty good. So let's look at how we would handle the logic. Well, the first job is to give this boss some health. So on level start, we want to set one of its object values to be 10. You can have 3 different values per object. Then, when the ball collides with him, we want the ball to bounce as it normally would do, and we want to subtract 1 from that value. We also want to get it to trigger our face animation. And then with that, we can then do a test against the value, and if it equals 0, then we're on to the next level because the boss is dead. You know what's missing? Audio. So let's add some while we're here. So when the ball hits the boss, we want it to play a sound. And it gives us this nice interface for playing sounds and then eventually picking which one we want to use. And with that done, we can also set a bit of music, which we can trigger off the level start event. So let's give it a go, shall we? This is coming together really quite nicely. Now I don't know about you, but after I've made an amazing game, the first thing I want to do is share it. But first of all, we should try giving it a name. So, Breakdown should do, and we've got to put our name as the author, and then we should set up some instructions as well, so the player knows how to play it. And we need to make sure we've set the players correctly and give them minimum and maximum values for their lives, as well as the score. But with all that done, we have 3 individual options. The first is to make an internet game. which allows the game to be played inside a browser. Yes, that's right, in 1997 you could play games in browsers, though you did need to download and install a plugin from their website. The next and probably most used option was to just create an executable. This even allowed you to create installers and protect your game so other people couldn't edit it. And the final option was to make a screensaver, so you could do your crazy animations and then have it running as your screensaver, which is pretty damn cool. As there are a large number of features and a lot of logic that can get really complex, Europress included lots of help files and even a whole suite of tutorials and some sample games. As you'd expect, the games were all made in the Games Factory, have lots of comments and even give you hints on how to change the code and areas that you can improve, or even just make brand new levels of it. These are a great source to find out what you can actually do with this software. But what was more surprising was the fact that tutorials were also written in the Games Factory, so you can watch them and then check out all the code that's running behind it, which is very cool. If you've enjoyed what you've seen in this episode, I'll make sure there's links to the ClickTeam's website where you can still download a copy of the Games Factory today, as well as making sure there is links so you can grab everything that I've worked on in this episode. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That was the only factory I ever wanted to work in, and this was Goldfish on Games. Goodbye. Thank you for watching my video about the Games Factory. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, all that fun stuff. And if you used it back in the day, why don't you consider sharing your experiences in the comments, as I'd love to hear about it.